The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back to the Cosmic Library, where you can read the greatest stories in all of the multiverse. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
We are doing this show in conjunction with Second Union. For more of the latest headlines and entertainment, please go to our website at wearesecondunion.com. You know what? The world was very different when we were here last week.
Funny how it changes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's positives and negatives to it. On the positive, my evening commute takes about as long as it ought to take. A third as long as usual. Negatives?
Yeah, same.
Negatives? They've even closed down my gyms.
Oh,
So,
no.
yeah, that was like my primary stress release and just thing to do. Work on my physique and, try to keep my health somewhat better than dumb. So, it's like tomorrow night I'm probably going to have to take a long walk and work with a couple of the kettlebells around the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still trying to figure out how exactly I can do all this. How about you guys? How are you doing?
Same old. Work is still having us come in. They're just saying sanitize your areas, don't breathe on people, stay 6 feet away. It's like, cool. But then again, my commute this morning was like 20 minutes, whereas it's usually an hour in the morning.
Yeah.
So.
However, sanitize your area sounds very personal.
Just, here's some Lysol wipes. Do what you will with them. Okay. I'm getting out hand sanitizer. They're like, if you feel sniffly, do not come in. Okay.
I don't have such a luxury of staying that far away from people. I work in a 5x10 box.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. A gas station can be a little bit rough to work in. I mean, I work in an office, and they asked me if I wanted to telecommute, and I just kind of blinked and said, no, well, you don't want me working from home. And the lead secretary nearly just flipped at how quick my answer was. She just said, why would you not want to work from home? I have interesting stuff at home. I wouldn't do work if I was sitting there.
I've got cats. I'd be petting them all day. Just,
Shoot, I'm still trying to figure out the rest of everything. I mean, I've had to cancel part of my plans for April, and we will get to that as part of the news. And the odd thing was, part of the plans was a convention, the other part was Disneyland. When I talked to the guys, it's just like, so we're postponing, right? No, we need to get out of the house. We're still coming down. Excuse me?
How are they going to get down there?
Probably drive. You can still drive.
But it's shut down.
Yeah,
the parks are closed.
No, not the parks. The Grapevine was shut down.
Well, it's shut down for now because of snow. It's not shut down because of any particular rule.
Ah.
We've had some heavy storms over the last few days. Cold ones, too. And believe me, I'm still staring at the Disneyland thing, trying to see if they're going to reopen at the time where these people are coming, because at that point they have a decision to make. It's like, I can go either way. I can hang out and play video games with people and talk for a while and watch riff tracks. I'm totally cool with that. I just don't know if that's all they would want to do.
Right. I just want to know who's playing Jumanji. Snowstorms, crazy economic nonsense, this coronavirus, like what the heck?
See, I don't think it's Jumanji, man. Jumanji would be so much more messed up than this. We'd be dealing with mayflies and stuff. Personally, I think Franklin Richards has moved us to counter Earth again.
Maybe, that's a good theory.
Everything's just off the wall. And we could get into all of that, except it would take long to set up, long to explain, and then even longer to discuss what could happen in the next 6 to 10 weeks, let alone anything else. But that is a bit complicated for where we sit, because this week we are going to talk about the first 6 issues of the Wonder Twins from Wonder Comics imprint of DC, but we will get to that after the news of the past week. And we're going to start with Marvel comic news. We're going to talk about the various intellectual properties of the House of Mouse and what storylines they have upcoming. First of all, we know that on Disney Plus, certain things have been delayed because of the coronavirus. The production's been halted on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I believe it's been halted on WandaVision too, although I'm not sure if they finished filming first. But another project that's being worked on by Marvel Studios is Shang-Chi. He's the legendary master of Kung Fu. There's supposed to be a movie coming out called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which obviously ties into the first Iron Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, though, Marvel Comics has planned a tie-in comic book series to go with the upcoming film. It was reported by the New York Times that the new Shang-Chi series will begin releasing in June, and it'll be a 5-issue miniseries. Jean Luen Yang, who was known for the graphic novel American-Born Chinese, as well as the new Superman from the New 52, he's going to write the series. Philip Tan and Deke Ruan will be doing the art. When Yang was talked to about the series, he said, quote, "I mean, it's Shang-Chi. He's probably the most prominent Asian... I guess he's the Asian American now, since he moved over here. Asian American superhero," unquote. How familiar are you guys with the idea of Shang-Chi?
Not very.
Okay, Shang-Chi...
Basic ideas.
Yeah, Shang-Chi was made in, I want to say, the 70s. I'm not absolutely certain of his first appearance. But I guess in short, what you can say is he's like a friendly Bruce Lee. He is a master of martial arts. He's like one of the top in Marvel's fictional universe. And he's notorious for not having any real special abilities or weapons, even. He prefers his bare hands. But he's usually pretty affable. We actually ran into him a little bit in a prior show when we read the first volume of a Domino series from 2018. When she was trying to figure out what happened to her luck, why it was disappearing, she decided to get retrained, and she went to Shang-Chi for that.
Yeah, I remember that.
The last time I remember seeing him was during the Avengers World Initiative. He was part of this globe-spanning group of like 30 Avengers that Iron Man and Captain America were working on. And towards the end of that run, I remember he got really dangerous because he ended up in a spot. I think he was up against a member of the Black Order. I think it was Corvus Glaive, and Glaive was just laughing how this guy may have been fending him off, but he was barehanded. And that's when, out of nowhere, Shang-Chi produced his pair of nunchaku that he's never used before, obviously. But it was even weirder because when they started to swing them, one end of them started to glow. And in the exposition boxes, we found out that he got these nunchaku from Tony Stark, made specifically for him. Apparently there was repulsors embedded in the end of the nunchaku.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah. It was more or less just, okay, well, we don't need to see that fight. It's over.
Just gave him a pair of swinging beat sticks.
Mm-hmm. But another character is showing a very strange amount of ability right now, because there may be a second god of symbiotes.
What?
If you've been following the Spider-Man and Venom series at all in the last couple years, you know that there is a god of symbiotes, Null. This overriding thing that is thousands of years old and is now, as a result of absolute carnage, on its way to Earth. It has the ability to communicate with symbiotes over a long distance, even corrupt and take them over and make them into slaves. And lately it's been using Carnage as a sort of scion on Earth to do its will. Well, the Carnage symbiote is in the middle of trying to take over Eddie Brock.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and Eddie has sequestered himself on an island to try and keep this influence away from everybody else. But it's also creating a war between it and the Venom symbiote. It's getting rather weird.
Of course.
Believe it or not, Eddie Brock is not the new god of symbiotes. His recently discovered son, Dylan, is.
Oh, okay.
There's still a little bit of a mystery as to where Dylan comes from. It appears he's the son of Eddie Brock, unbeknownst to him. The Venom symbiote seems to have claimed to have had or at least assisted Eddie with a physical relationship with his wife while he was unconscious. It's a complicated story, and I'm still not quite sure I get the grasp of it. But Dylan is showing an extreme amount of ability to control symbiotes. There is another symbiote in Marvel Comics known as the Sleeper, and Dylan was able to exert mental control over it, and not only did he exert control, he's shown enough fine ability to be able to collapse the Sleeper symbiote into the form of a small cat, which now follows him around.
Fun times.
Yeah. He's also able to talk to the Venom symbiote while it's stuck on the island with the Carnage symbiote and Eddie Brock remotely. There's something extra going on here. I have a feeling there's a couple more secrets to be debuted once Null hits Earth, and he and Dylan may have some kind of confrontation. Meanwhile, in the Immortal Hulk series, the latest issue was by Al Ewing and Joe Bennett. It's number 32. And the Hulk is still a horror series. In 32 issues, that has not changed thus far. Lately, the Hulk has been under a lot of strain from an older enemy that's been reborn called Xemnu the Titan. Xemnu is this large... he's like Hulk in stature, but he's large, furry. He almost looks like some kind of weird cross between the Hulk and the Abominable Snowman. Except Xemnu also has some kind of weird telepathic or, I don't know, empathic abilities. He's able to make people believe whatever stories he tells, even through devices like cell phones and tablets.
Interesting. It's
gotten worse, though, because the Hulk had a confrontation with Xemnu the Titan that did not go well. The Hulk had to retreat. Now that everybody's back in Gamma Base, and it's daytime, the Hulk has shifted back into Bruce Banner. The problem is that while the Hulk seems to be immune to Xemnu's influences, Banner isn't.
Oh, wonderful.
So his attitude is shifting in very strange and unknown ways. Oddly enough, though, it may be one of the Hulk's more recent acquisitions that may be the key to undoing Xemnu's influence. Because several of the heroes that have encountered Xemnu are finding themselves referring to Xemnu as the Hulk, the only Hulk, the Hulk that's come to save them. However, Dr. McGowan, the head researcher at Gamma Base, seems to be immune to Xemnu's influences. And it's not because of any significant technological change, augmentation, or those weird things that tend to crop up in comic books. The simple answer is, Dr. McGowan is transgender. She used to be a male, and she attributes her ability to get past Xemnu, according to the dialogue, quote, "Yeah, I don't really bring this up with people I don't know well, but for me, the realization of that, it was the start of this long process of self-examination, I guess, or self-discovery. I spent a long time working out what was me and what wasn't. What was a story told about me, to me, by the world. And now this thing, this monster from the magic planet, this Hulk, it can look at me through a screen. It can force its narratives onto me, even into my head, and I've had enough of that. Who I am belongs to me," unquote. I know it sounds a little bit trite, but as I was reading that this past week, I found it a little refreshing. Characters are often, even well-crafted ones, often fall into different archetypes and stereotypes. Batman and Wolverine are the biggest examples of those. It's interesting to have a character actually going through go through a point of self-discovery and actually talk about the evolution of whom they are. I found that rather interesting. It's also kind of interesting that it's one of the non-powered characters, not even a combatant, who may have the actual answer here. Well, you gotta admit, in the Hulk series, most often things are solved by Smash.
Hulk smash, yeah.
Yeah. Not Hulk Smash, it's She-Hulk Smash, or Thunderbolt Smash, or even Dr. Samson Smash.
There's a whole lot of smashing.
Yeah. And not of that of the club type variety. It comes up. Meanwhile, Thor is having a rough day in his own series. He's king
What's
of...
he up to?
Okay, so he's king of Asgard. He is the herald of Galactus to face off against the Black Winter. He has agreed to help Galactus feed on a specific planet that are supposed to overcharge Galactus to help him resist this Black Winter, this entropic force that just kind of... I'm trying to decide of the right way to put it. It's this effective life atrophy. Where it goes, there's nothing behind, right? So, a lot of people are taking umbrage with the idea that Thor will help Galactus devour these planets. First, it was Beta Ray Bill. And this was an issue ago. This was in issue 3. Thor got so upset with Bill's interference that he managed to convince Bill to throw Stormbreaker, to which Thor caught. Thor thought Mjolnir, which Bill caught, both of which, and Bill struggling a little bit with Mjolnir. It is the hammer of hammers, right? Thor decided to end this, not by attacking Bill. He attacked Mjolnir while he was still holding Stormbreaker and shattered the hammer.
Ooh.
Not Mjolnir. He purposefully hit Stormbreaker onto Mjolnir hard enough to shatter Stormbreaker.
Oh.
Which leaves Bill without a source of power.
Yeah, and I was...
Jerk move,
I'm thinking
too.
about yeah, it's a jerk move, but I'm thinking about the science behind it. Like, you know how only a diamond can cut another diamond? Is that kind of the idea?
I don't think Stormbreaker is made out of the same type of materials Mjolnir is classically.
But
thought
it's similarly
was.
enchanted.
They're similarly
Oh,
enchanted, but it's a different
okay.
material. Here's the thing, though. At the end of issue 3, and where issue 4 picks up, is that somebody else came to Bill's assistance after Stormbreaker was broken. The new guardian of the Rainbow Bridge of Asgard. And I say new because Heimdall, as you know in Valkyrie, is gone.
Uh-huh.
Right.
The new person running the Rainbow Bridge is Lady Sif.
Huh.
Mm.
So, in issue 4 by Donny Cates and Nick Klein, Thor is still not having this interference. He's going to do what needs to be done. He calls Mjolnir back to his hand, gives it a hard toss at Sif. Sif stabs the edge of her sword in the ground. A rainbow bridge appears between her and Thor, and Mjolnir is gone.
Huh.
Give it a minute, it'll be back.
Actually, it wasn't.
Ruh-roh.
Thor and Sif had a throwdown, and as far as I know, it is still not entirely resolved. But, well, it does by the end of the issue fly back to his grasp, but it took a while to get there. What we see in the interceding pages was that Sif sent it somewhere very specific. She sent it to Jotunheim.
Why there?
I don't know if she had a specific plan. Maybe she just decided to send it there. The thing was, where it ended up, the person who saw it thought they were being teased.
Loki?
Yeah, Loki is the current king of Jotunheim.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
This thing ended up in his throne chamber. So he kept prodding at it because he's been teased like this before. You know, haha, pick up the hammer. Go ahead, I dare you. Or the few times he's actually been able to pick it up, it turns out it was Thor messing with him and then he got struck with lightning. You know, this has not gone well for him. But he's known that Thor is having more and more trouble picking up Mjolnir since the beginning of this Thor series started. Like his worthiness is in question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And after spending a while looking around, kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, but nobody's come to pick up this hammer, it hasn't flown away, what's going on? So he just gets curious. He reaches out, grabs the hammer, and picks it up.
What?
Yeah, even Loki in the panel looks very confused by this, and he just says, well, that's very interesting.
Yeah. And how is he worthy, though?
That's the question.
Well, the worthiness is never been fully explained what determines that.
Well,
And
as
it
far as I
always
understand.
changes. It's a moving goalpost.
Well,
Because Thor couldn't use Mjolnir and be Thor when he considered himself unworthy. He felt that he wasn't.
right, and you got to remember, though, that the hammer has a will and mind of its own. We've discovered that the mother of all storms, this cosmic storm, a sentient storm, is what causes the enchantment and power of the hammer itself.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a mind guiding it in some degree. And, you know, while Loki was holding it, it wasn't just inert. It started to crackle with power as he held it. So evidently, he could probably use whatever's inside of it right now. But before he could really plumb the idea as to what all this means was when the hammer was suddenly called away and it started to rocket back to Midgard.
Huh.
I'm not saying Loki is a hero or a villain right now. He's pretty much been anti-hero ever since the Marvel Cinematic Universe started, really.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess the question is, what does somebody that now knows that he may be worthy of the powers that kind of escaped him all this time, what does he do with that? Because Loki, in all of his iterations, he's been a planner and a manipulator, for both positive and negative. So what does he do with that?
Explore the idea.
Of what? What does it prove to anybody, except that maybe, for right now anyway, the hammer will work for him?
He's always been an opportunist, though, so he could get up to just about anything.
Yeah, and there's also the idea that this form of Loki is not the form he will eventually take towards the end of the universe. We've seen these future projections where Loki seems to be back to his original form, but he's like been thrice empowered and is Thor's equal at this point with something called the Necro Sword.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated. Speaking of complicated, Spider-Woman's new series launches this week.
Oh.
Yep, it's being done with Carla Pacheco and Pere Perez and Frank D'Amata. It's putting Spider-Woman into her own series that puts her up against the daughter of an old foe of hers. But she is also getting this new black costume we've seen in several solicits and covers.
Mm-hmm.
The daughter is a woman named Octavia.
Oh.
Is that daughter of Doc Ock?
No, actually her name is Octavia Vermis. According to Carlos Pacheco, quote, "I love Octavia. She's the daughter of Count Otto Vermis, whom Jess exploded at one point. And she's created a bit of a black market empire, presumably using her father's old underworld connections. She and Jess meet in our second issue when Jess desperately needs something Octavia has, and it's a pretty epic showdown. Octavia is definitely more than she seems, and I can't wait for everyone to meet her," unquote. That's curious. I wonder if Spider-Woman's still seeing Porcupine. She was seeing a C-rate supervillain who she beat up a few times, then turned into her, I guess you could say, associate in her private detective business. You often helped her with watching her son, Jerry.
And he was a villain?
Yeah, he was.
Was he only a part-time villain?
No, maybe he just got tired of being punched in the face all the time.
Yeah, that can get tiring pretty quickly.
He was pretty
he like
serious.
a full-on villain, or like just sidekick or henchman? Like what kind of level?
He's one of those 70s and 80s supervillains who I'm sure somebody created with great intentions, but nobody knew what to do, after the first story ended.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been kind of a punching bag, or one of those guys that appears in the background. And early on in the run of Spider-Woman, yeah, she encountered this guy, and she beat him up, but after a couple tries, I think she, if I remember correctly, because she was working with Ben Urich as an information specialist, she just decided to try talking to him and finding out why he was doing all this. And the guy has a heart. He had an ex-wife and a son, and he was trying to get money so that he could afford a decent custody battle, and it just wasn't working. And she decided to try and talk him through his problems instead of just punching him, dropping him off for the cops, and perpetuating a cycle.
By dating him and leaving her kid with him?
That was eventual. She just kind of hired him. And it turned out that not only was he good at backing her up, but during the period she was offline because of maternity, he actually took over her business for a while and helped out.
Interesting series of events.
Well,
I have
Ben
to go back
Urich,
and read this.
yeah, Ben Urich was the guy in charge. He was the one picking the missions. Porcupine was the muscle, but he never actually made any moves to betray them. In fact, he even outsmarted a supervillain that came for him. I think it was the Hobgoblin.
Really?
Yeah, part of the reason why he was pulling jobs was because the Hobgoblin, I think it was the Hobgoblin, anyway, kept picking up like random supervillains, selling his tech so that they could kind of franchise out. He was franchising the name.
Huh.
And, Porcupine can never come up with the right amount of money to repay all this stuff, so the Hobgoblin came after him and tried to kill him. The thing is, the Porcupine's kind of a paunchy dude, and he was caught in an explosion. For a long time, Jess was after the Hobgoblin because she was just upset that this sweet man was killed. Except, towards the end of the run of her last volume, or her last series, Porcupine reappeared. It turns out what happened was, when he knew the Hobgoblin was coming after him, he took Jess's Jess's maternity girdle that was gifted to her by Captain Marvel, the one that supposedly could take like a tank round to it and not hurt the baby as she was carrying it. Well, it just happened to be in his size, and he may be, a schlubby villain, but he's not stupid, so he figured, why not?
That's great. And what a gift.
Well, if I say this in all seriousness, Joanna, if you have not read the Dennis Hopeless Spider-Woman series, the one I've been alluding to, pick it up. It is hilarious. It is an absolute...
I'm adding this to my list.
It is an absolute gem. I'm sure the graphic novels are attainable. And, in the first issue, Spider-Woman is like 6 to 8 months pregnant, and she's holding a maternity party because she is, air quotes, retiring for a little while to go on maternity leave.
So she's having a baby shower?
She is, and of course, because of who she is, a lot of Marvel heroes show up.
Mm-hmm.
And, what was it? Captain Marvel is her best friend, Carol.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
And, what was it? Tony Stark was just talking to Captain Marvel, looking side-eye at Jessica. He says, I wonder who the baby is. And Carol just kind of narrows her eyes and says, you should go ask her. Really? Oh, yeah, she loves it when people ask her whose baby it is. Okay. He walks over. Suddenly you hear this giant zap! And then there's Tony with like half a tray of appetizers on top of his armored head.
Nice.
And then later on, Carol and Jessica were talking, and she just said, So a lot of people are wondering whose baby it is. Yeah, well, I don't have to tell anybody. And then Carol just kind of puts her hands on her hips. You know the internet thinks it's mine, right? You know, it even had scenes of Jessica, like, laying in bed at 4 in the morning. Oh, my God, it's like laying with a furnace in my stomach. You know, come on, kid, quiet down. I need sleep, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, who was the author behind that?
Dennis Hopeless. I saw him at a convention after this came out, and I asked him, you know, I told him, this sounds really familiar with my own experiences with pregnant women. You know, what was your source for this? And he looks at me without irony and says, my wife. She was pregnant at the time, and I started to write things down as she was talking.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense.
No, it's really good. I mean, this was post the whole cover controversy when an artist like drew her in a pose over a wall and people said it was too sexy.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, she had to rescue a Skrull kid who just says, "Don't worry, I'm here to rescue you." He says, "Oh, you're Spider-Woman. Oh, you know me. Yeah, you're the Avenger with a butt." Oh.
You're not going to get rescued now just for that, jerk.
So, it's a very self-aware series. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, sounds good. I just added it to my list.
Okay. Well, the X-Men are still on Krakoa, and they're still looking to make it the homeland for all mutants in the Marvel Universe. And the X-Men have made a very bad decision. Because they're still recruiting mutants that have not come to the homeland yet, right?
Right.
They've decided it's time to talk to Molly Hayes.
Oh!
Joanna, do you know that name?
Yes.
Molly Hayes is the pint-sized mutant the Runaways. She is super strong, very invulnerable, and very much maybe 14 at this point.
Yeah, very, very much the pushy, whiny teenager.
Yeah, she exhibited powers very young comparatively. When the Runaways first started, she may have been 11.
Really that young?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not unheard of. Some mutants actually experience power manifestation extremely early on. Madrox was a baby when he first copied.
Mm-hmm.
It varies depending on the stressors in their lives.
Well, Molly Hayes is also one of the mutants that came back during the battle for the Atom.
Yeah, well, that storyline is pretty much over. But they're sending out a representative to go pick up the Molly Hayes, the current Molly Hayes, right?
Mm-hmm.
They sent the worst possible person to go do this.
Oh, who?
They sent Logan.
Oh.
This is going to happen in an upcoming issue of The Runaways, number 34, by Rainbow Rowell and Andres Genolet. I wonder if they know what happened the first time Wolverine went to recruit Molly Hayes for a mutant school.
Maybe they do remember and they think it's funny.
I don't know. I can't imagine this going well. Joanna, do you know what happened the first time Wolverine tried to bring Molly Hayes to his Jean Grey school?
No, but I can imagine.
No, you can't. It only took one punch.
One hit wonder?
Oh, yeah, she knocked him out.
Oh, I know. I figured that's what happened.
Well, he wasn't prepared for this. All he knew was Cerebro said, "Hey, mutant, I guess I'll go talk to this one." He wasn't expecting a young girl that had been living without adults so long she really didn't have time for another one.
Well, maybe he's going to come in prepared.
I don't know. The cover is just in Molly Hayes, who is now taller than Wolverine, just kind of crossing her arms and looking down at this guy thumbing towards a Krakoan portal as if to say, "Now go."
Wow, she must have a growth spurt.
Well, remember, I said she's 14 about now, and Wolverine in comic books, he's about 5'2", maybe?
3.
Really?
Yeah, he's
I
short.
always imagine him like taller just because of his personality.
He is short.
He is legendarily short in the comic books. I mean, Nightcrawler is technically a couple inches taller than he is.
I mean, you know, the movies don't really help show that. They tried, but
Yeah. You can't hire short actors just because of height. But, yeah, he is pretty short. Last up, when it comes to Marvel comic news, some designs and descriptions have been released for the latest version of the New Warriors. We know that because of this week's Outlawed event, young heroes are about to become technically against the law unless they have some kind of chaperones. Well, some of the original New Warriors, Night Thrasher, Firestar, Rage, Speedball, Namorita, and Silhouette, will step up to help train new young heroes. And because of Newsarama, there's actually a set of descriptions and images for these new warriors, and they are very young sounding. These are going to be a brand new group of teenage characters underneath the new warriors who have to learn the trade. And the first one I can share with you is one who may be a pseudo-leader. Her name is Trailblazer. Trailblazer, I'm still deciding as to how nifty it is, but basically she's a regular kid who got scooped up into superheroing. She has a, air quotes, magic backpack that's actually a pocket dimension with seemingly infinite space from which she can pull out random or useful objects. It's not always under control. She is said to have gotten this power from a god, but, quote, not the one you're thinking of, unquote. I took a look at that backpack, and for some reason I'm thinking Magus? Like something from the Technarchy?
Maybe. It has kind of that feel to it.
Yeah.
It has a very Kirby feel to it, but there's something about it that just screams Technorganic to me.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I'm not quite sure what to think of that. Don't give me any loud groans or anything, please, because a lot of these have to do with current teens, not teenagers from our particular generation. So you're going to have to give me a little bit of leeway here.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is called Screen Time.
Screen time.
Yeah, according to the writers, quote, the word screen time is only ever used in a sort of restrictive sense, and because we're doing a story about teenage rebels, a lot of the names are about teens fighting against the labels that are put on them. So with screen time, we like the idea that he has infinite screen time, unquote. The reason for that is because he was exposed to his grandfather's experimental internet gas, and now he can see augmented reality and the internet in real time.
Huh.
He's pretty much connected to the World Wide Web. Biologically, he can instantly Google any fact. It doesn't technically make him a genius, but he acts like it. And as soon as I read that, I'm just like, ooh, I want to see him and Quentin Quire meet somewhere.
I was just thinking that. Who would have, like, the biggest ego out of the two?
This would be a heck of a smarm-off.
The universe might implode with that much sarcasm in one place.
Well, also on this list are a pair of twins. Young man and young woman appear to be African American or maybe Wakandan in nature. And please don't hurt me because of the names, because these are actual.
Are you serious?
Yep, they are known as Snowflake and Safe Space, which to me is just kind of hilarious. They are psychics.
No.
Yes, Snowflake can create snowflake-like shaped shuriken projectiles for throwing. Safe Space materializes pink force fields, but he can't be inside one himself. He can only protect other people with them.
Their names are horrible.
Yeah.
I'm groaning now.
According to the writer, they're hyper-aware of modern culture and optics, and they see their superheroics as, quote, a post-ironic meditation on using violence to combat bullying, unquote.
And of course, the irony of the switching of the male wearing the pink and the female wearing the blue.
Mm-hmm. I don't like the names, but I'm willing to give this a chance just because the concept is interesting.
I like the concept, but the names are horribad.
I think that's the idea, though.
Ugh.
These are a bunch of teens rebelling against the machine. And then last up, you have B Negative. Now, B Negative apparently got his abilities from an unauthorized medical procedure that involved a sample of Michael Morbius's blood, the living vampire.
Oh.
Okay, I like this guy.
He's also obsessed with the music and culture of the 90s and the aughts. According to the writer, quote, the world is a vampire, and so am I, unquote.
He would totally listen to My Chemical Romance.
So does he have those weird suction things on his hands from that they did for the show? The cartoon show?
Michael Morbius, as far as I know, the suckers in the hands were pretty much his wall crawling ability. Morbius was able to stick to walls like other heroes, but it was way more creepy than other characters that could do it.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying though, in the '90s cartoon show, the Spider-Man show, that's how he sucked out the blood instead of actually biting people to make it more PG.
No, I'm pretty sure B Negative would still bite people.
B Negative instead of B.
Yeah,
that's positive.
That's his name, B Negative. Yeah. They continue, quote, B Negative is the goth kid. When he was a baby, he got a rogue life-saving blood transfusion, we assume from Michael Morbius, and now has a very similar look and very similar vampire powers. B Negative acts like a regular person. Or does he? And he definitely drinks blood. Or does he? But designer Luciano Vecchio took brilliant inspiration from the 90s Spider-Man cartoon and gave B negative the leech suckers that the animated version of Morbius had on his palms, unquote.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
Yeah. So I believe New Warriors is supposed to come out in April. You know what? I want to read this.
I'll be honest, I am actually like the cleverness of this guy's name than everyone else.
I like them all. It's very modern. It's a brand new set of characters. It irritates me a lot when you have new books that are just kind of staffed with the same old characters. And this is a bit of a risk, but I like it.
Snowflake and Safe Space. Oh my goodness. Just no.
Like I said, it was an eye roll when I read the names, but when I read the concept, I'm like, okay, I'll check this out.
I like the concept. I like the kind of self-awareness, just the names.
I think it's funny because Snowflake won't melt easy and Safe Space does everything but protect himself. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'll give him that.
Well, next up we have DC Comic News. We'll talk about the other major company in comics and what they have coming now and in the near future. Tom King is continuing to tease things on Reddit. Right now, or at least this past week, he teased an image that showed Rorschach from The Watchmen.
Okay.
I know. I don't know who did the art because, as we've seen, Tom King is not what you would consider an artist.
No.
But he posted the image of Rorschach and a woman in a domino mask on Twitter. Then he deleted it. The woman with him... Actually, it shows the original Rorschach, I'm pretty sure, Walter Kovacs. And yeah, a woman in a mask and a fedora. Evidently, Tom King worked a little bit with the Watchmen when he was doing the Batman Flash crossover, The Button, which saw the mysterious, or the symbolizing button of the Watchmen stuck in the side of Batman's cave. However, he hasn't done really a Watchmen-centric story at all. I'm not a particular fan of the Watchmen. I think I got introduced to them too late in my life. I don't think the miniseries held up very well. That's just my opinion.
I was never a fan.
I don't think the creator thought the miniseries held up.
I know the creator would like to have the series back so he could do something with it.
Yeah.
You know, that's a whole copyrights issue that would take a while to explain, but yeah, I'm not sure Tom King would be enough to draw me personally to read a Watchmen spin-off series of any sort. I like King's writing, but The Watchmen is already a deconstruction of superheroics. I don't know if you need to bash it any further. Also, it's been noted that from the June solicitations of DC Comics, there's no mention of DC's Generation event. The Generation event, as far as I know, is supposed to help lay out the DC 5th generation timeline, including the part where Wonder Woman is the first hero in DC Comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no evidence of it in the June solicitation, so I don't know if that means there's a problem with the 5th generation, or if they're taking a break and then putting part of it out to July. It's a little concerning. I mean, the latest Generation 1 comic I know of coming out would be The Age of Mysteries. It's supposed to be out May 27th. There's supposed to be 4 more Prestige one-shots that would follow monthly. Generation 2, The Age of the Metahuman. Generation 3, The Age of Crisis. Generation 4, The Age of Rebirth. And Generation 5, The Age of Tomorrow. There is no mention of The Age of Metahuman in DC's June solicit. So the first part, The Age of Mysteries, is all we have for right now. I'm concerned about that. You know, this could be the thing that helps turn DC around by making a definitive timeline. If they suddenly ditch that, I don't know where it leaves it. Also, Batman and Superman may have to take on their absolute worst enemies. Each other.
I was waiting for you to say that.
According to the solicit for Batman Superman number 11, it's being done by Joshua Williamson with art by Max Raynor. Quote, it's Superman versus Batman as the deadly machinations of the Ultra-Humanite crash to their end. The Dark Knight has been transformed into a human atomic bomb, all in the name of wiping Superman from the face of the Earth. As Batman struggles against the urge to kill his friend, Superman must undo the damage done and help the other victims of the Ultra-Humanite's experiments. It's the thrilling conclusion to Atomic that will reverberate across the DC universe for months to come, unquote. I don't quite know what human atomic bomb means. Except, I mean, this is Superman we're talking about. Wouldn't an atomic bomb just kind of make him want to fart or something?
No, radiation still affects him like any other person.
Does it?
Yes.
I would think that
because
because of his radiation absorbing abilities, it really wouldn't be much of anything.
Or it would power him up.
Yeah.
Well, it's a specific type of radiation. Unfortunately, the radiation that they're talking about, this will still affect him normally because he has to wear a lead suit whenever he walks into a nuclear reactor.
I know he used to. I don't know if that still happens.
Yeah, I don't know what's changed in, I don't know, what, 20 years?
Yeah, because, I mean...
30. God.
He's capable of flying through space. Technically, that means he's bathed in worse radiation than you would find in an atomic bomb.
Yeah, well, people's understanding of science 30 years ago was not as great as it was now.
It always comes down to Superman versus Batman, doesn't it? To me, it smacks of a big problem when the villains of your universe are not big enough to tackle your heroes.
Yeah, it's just all been done before.
There's an additional problem, and that is misinformation. It doesn't just occur in science. It occurs in comic books, too. Right now, first print copies of Nightwing number 70 are going for between $30 and $75 on eBay. And that's because there's a synopsis of the comic that led people to believe it's the first time Punchline appears. Which we already know is not her first appearance. She first appeared in Batman number 89, which came out a few weeks ago. That was her first cameo. Then her first full appearance was in, Year of the Villain, Hell Arisen number 3. Nightwing number 70 hasn't even gone on sale yet. It's scheduled to go on sale this week. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact. But it's already being listed very high on eBay because people believe this is the first full appearance of Punchline. It's just... I'm not even sure it's misinformation. It's just a lack of knowledge as to what's happening in comic books right now. Some of the variant covers are going as high as $75. Ah, jeez.
That's crazy.
Meanwhile, Batman number 89 and Year of the Villain, Hell Arisen number 3 have both gone back for third printings. First print copies of both comics are going as high as $30 or $75 on eBay. I'm curious to know if that's going to hold up. I know that the fervor on Punchline right now is high, but we still haven't technically seen what this character is capable of or what even her general demeanor is. I guess it's a case of people speculating she'll be a hot commodity, but I haven't seen it proven yet. Meanwhile, the Deceased event, the one that saw an anti-life infection ravage an alternative version of the DC universe, it's getting its own sequel called Deceased Dead Planet. The creative team is Tom Taylor. He is the writer, and let me see. Believe the artist is Trevor Harain and Rain Barreto. I don't know the names very well. But in the aftermath of the Deceased timeline, a brand new Justice League has been formed of several prominent characters and the progeny of other prominent characters. Damian Wayne and John Kent have now taken on the identities of Batman and Superman in this universe. There is also Cassandra Sandsmark is now Wonder Woman. Also palling around with him is John Constantine, the Green Arrow, and the Green Lantern, known as Dinah Lance. Part of the Deceased miniseries saw the Hal Jordan lose his ring, and it went straight to Dinah. Which to me is terrifying. If she learns how to use that, could you imagine what that would do to her canary cry?
Seriously.
That would be the scream to end all screams.
She wouldn't even have to open her mouth. She could just probably replicate with the ring.
Maybe. But in news of other DC sequels, Dark Knight's Death Metal came out with another solicit image. The cover to Dark Knight's Metal number 2 may show the biggest Batmobile I have ever seen. And I know people around here are probably familiar with the 1990s one from the animated series. The Tim Burton one with all the fins. You're probably even familiar with the Tumbler from the Zack Snyder verse, right?
Right.
Well, this is what it would look like if you cross the Batmobile with Bigfoot. And I do not mean Sasquatch.
I've seen this image.
That's kind of cool.
I don't know if it's cool or not. I'm looking at this just going, someone's overcompensating.
I didn't say he wasn't, but it's kind of cool.
I mean, even in the type of scenario they're talking about with another metal event, this feels like a bit much.
Well, Batman was always a bit much, but not as much as Superman.
I suppose that's true.
I
Where's the
like Wonder
chainsaw?
Woman's outfit.
Well, yeah, we've seen that before in other solicits. I'm looking for the chainsaw of truth.
She doesn't have it. She's got a little short sword.
It appears so. When it comes to DC's regular canon, though, it appears that Batman has introduced another weapon, which may be the most brutal ever. We've seen the odd things he has. A fleet of drones called the Bat Swarm. The Echo, which allows him to carjack vehicles that have Wayne Tech equipment in it. The Shadowcasters, which make people think they're being followed by Batman because it projects his silhouette on the wall. Well, he has a new weapon, which to me should probably be illegal. It's a batarang grenade.
Really?
It is quite literally what it is. It is about this. It's a little larger than a flashbang grenade. You know, the white phosphorus that's supposed to disorient people.
Mm-hmm.
Except when he throws it in a room and it explodes, it seems to explode with a whole bunch of 2-inch batarangs, with such ferocity that they impale themselves into people.
That seems a bit excessive.
That's what I thought, because if it was just like a whole bunch of... Yeah, if it's a whole bunch of like half-inch projectiles, okay, that could irritate and incapacitate. I would be totally... I'd be okay with that. But judging by the comparative size of these things as they're jammed in people, you could cause serious brain damage, potentially death with this weapon, I think.
Right.
I sent you guys an image. If you take a look at the bottom panel there in the lower right, one of those things is halfway embedded into a man's temple. Wouldn't that cause brain damage? That looks to be sticking out of his head by a good inch, maybe inch and a half. And that's half of that batarang.
Yeah, at least brain damage, if not death.
Possibly blindness in that eye, at the very least. I understand this thing as a concept, but with the way Bruce Wayne's supposed to work with non-lethality, this feels like too much of a risk. If somebody's standing in the wrong place, they could get a batarang up under the jaw.
To be honest, I think whoever made this concept didn't really fully understand what they're trying to do.
Maybe not. It was just a bunch of...
The writer and artist do this, not Batman.
If it wasn't such an effective piercing weapon, if it was a whole bunch of bludgeoning type, you know, the rounded batarangs, and they were just meant to knock people out, I'd understand that.
Be better just doing a grenade with rubber pellets.
This feels excessive to me. This feels like a Dark Knight's Metal type thing.
This feels like a Zack Snyder thing.
You don't have to insult it.
Wow.
Hey, look, I appreciated 300, but he's remade that movie in just about every other project he's done. I've had enough.
I'm not saying that he didn't, but that comparison was a little harsh.
Opinions.
I admit it was, but it's the only comparison I got. I couldn't really tag this to anyone else I could think of.
Also, I didn't say it was inaccurate. I just said it was a little harsh. So.
No, I totally agree, but still, I couldn't figure out anyone who came close to this.
Okay, we can decide how mean that insult is later. For right now, there's a new Wonder Woman storyline going on in issue number 753 by Steve Orlando, Max Raynor, and Romulo Fajardo Jr. Mm-hmm. Wonder Woman, it appears, has to assist someone that you could consider one of her more antagonizing personalities. A cosmic character is dropped on her doorstep asking for help.
Who?
Maxima.
Really?
Yes, except it's not the Maxima that's probably known by a lot of DC fans. Back in 1989, there was a character that was called Maxima. She was supposed to be the eldest member of a family or the royal family, from a distant planet called Almerac. Okay? She was dissatisfied with the person she was supposed to marry, something named Ultra, with 2 A's. And she went to Earth, fell in love with Superman, and deemed this was going to be her husband, right? This was a being worthy to help her conceive a child. Well, because of the rebirth, a newer version of Maxima was introduced, and I don't mean the classic version went away. This is the daughter of the original Maxima, evidently, who, in the New 52 era, was created by Kay Perkins, Mike Johnson, and Manuela Lupacchino in 2014 in Supergirl number 36. And she didn't come to fight Supergirl about Superman. The newer version of Maxima was sent away from Almerac because she doesn't like men. Princess Maxima is, she's very firmly gay, and apparently Almerac does not look well upon that. She fell in love with Supergirl, but just like with the original story, Supergirl wasn't really interested in this, and declined. But this new version of Maxima would reappear in the DC's Rebirth era when she defeated an older version of Maxima that resembled the 1989 version. So this leads to a question as to why the younger Maxima, the gay Maxima, has dropped onto Wonder Woman's doorstep in Boston. And given Wonder Woman's own fluid sexuality, this creates a whole bunch of questions in my head.
True.
I'm interested to see how that storyline develops. That sounds compelling. Meanwhile, the Flash, we know, is going to deal with the Reverse Flash family. It's supposed to be some new group of villains that's going to obviously harass him and the people he knows. Except the first members of it may be his own children from the future, evidently. Do you guys know who the Tornado Twins are?
No.
No.
I had to do a little bit of reading myself, because I've heard this name before in comics, but I've never actually seen them. They are... In Flash number 758 by Joshua Williams, Rafa Sandoval, and Jordi Tarragona, the Tornado Twins are introduced as the first members of the Reverse Flash family. They were created by Jim Shooter and Win Mortimer in 1968's Adventure Comics number 373. They're a pair of twins named Don, D-O-N, and Dawn, D-A-W-N, Allen. They inherited their father, Barry Allen's super speed, while operating as superheroes in secret in the 30th century. Don would go on to have his own son named Bart Allen, who would eventually become Impulse. Don's daughter would become a Legion of Superheroes member known as XS, capital X, capital S, also comparatively holding super speed. There's no known reason why these descendants of Barry Allen have suddenly turned against their father, evidently. What is it with Flashes and twins? Between Dawn and Dawn Allen and Jay and Iris West, I don't understand. Is there something about super speeders that says they can only have 2 kids at a time?
Maybe.
I was more worried about a lot of his villains that aren't. A lot of his big time villains come from the future.
Yeah.
Well, the Flash is probably the only character that can mess up time more easily than Beast could. So, I don't know. I do know we're getting a new version of Aquaman. Or not, so, no. Sorry, messed that up. We're getting a new version of Hawkman.
Really?
Yeah, in a preview of number 23 of his series by Robert Venditti, Marcio Takara, and Fernando Passarin, we're getting one of Hawkman's new iterations. In the Rebirth era, we found out that Hawkman doesn't just reincarnate. He reincarnates across time and space, so that's why they're trying to resolve all the different versions of Hawkman. This is why we've had a version that's a Thanagarian, a version that's an Egyptian prince, a version that's an archaeologist, and so on, right? Except in number 23, we're getting a version of Hawkman from time and space we've never seen before. The solicit reads, quote, "Cloaked in black and wearing the eerie mask of a hawk, the mysterious Plague Doctor roams the 17th century in Europe in an attempt to ease the suffering of those who fall victim to the Black Death. But how is the Doctor supposed to help anyone when he's hated and feared for his unique immunity to the disease? It's mind versus body as Carter Hall relives his most tragic past life in a last stand to fight off Sky Tyrant's control over his body for good." Unquote.
That's interesting.
This is interesting.
It is a nice twist on the story. For those that don't know, the Sky Tyrant is an alternative version of Hawkman from Universe number 3, where all villains are heroes and vice versa. Evidently, in an attempt to purge it, he's going to remember a past life that's never been talked about before, an actual Plague Doctor. I'm sending you guys a copy of the cover that shows that there's no wings. It does appear to be this version of Hawkman using a mace, not necessarily the enchanted one, but he is dressed in the long black coat of a plague doctor. The only difference is his mask isn't black, it's gold, similar to classic Hawkman styling.
I like it.
No wings on the head, a wide brim black hat. I'm looking at this, and I'm not a Hawkman reader, but I looked at this and said, that's unique.
I'd read it. And the hands look like zombies.
Well, they said he was dealing with something called the Black Death, some kind of plague that evidently Hawkman in his enchanted nature is immune to.
Thank goodness it's not the bird flu.
Okay.
Boo.
It's a little personal. But I'm glad you guys like this concept, because, yeah, it was one of those cases where when I first read it, it's just like, oh, they're just copying the style. Then, according to the solicit, no, this has heart to it.
And them fearing him for being immune to it, that is legitimate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This actually looks very interesting to me.
I'd read it. When's that coming out?
You would ask me that right when I closed the window.
Of course. I was waiting for the click.
Evidently, this is going to be an April comic book. Goes on sale April 8th.
April 8th. Adding that one to my list.
Last up in DC Comics, sometimes you just need the brains to figure out what's going on. And if there is a brainy team in DC Comics, that would probably be not one that involves Batman for once. That would be the Terrifics. Mm-hmm. This is being led by Mr. Terrific, the third smartest person in DC Comics. And on his team is Metamorpho, who himself is not necessarily stupid, but a lot of people can't get past the idea that he's an elemental shapeshifter. As well as Plastic Man, who himself is not hyper-intelligent, but he improvs very well and he catches on to concepts quicker than a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It turns out when the Terrifics really get embroiled in a problem they can't figure out, though, they have a backup team called the T-Council, who is staffed with some of the smartest people in DC Comics. It's led by Ted Kord, the second Blue Beetle, who, as of the Rebirth or in the Rebirth era, is back to action. It also has Tom Strong from ABC Comics, which has now been folded into the DC universe. He's kind of a super science adventurer, as well as his wife, Dahlia Strong, who's also on the team. Now, Ray Palmer, the Atom, is supposed to be on the team, but he's locked up in another adventure, so Ryan Choi went in his place, the second Atom. And rounding out this is one character I'm not very well aware of, and Kirk Langstrom, the Man-Bat.
Really? Okay.
I haven't read Terrifics with any great severity, but I don't know, there's something about that team that just kind of captures my imagination. It is full of the freaks and geeks of DC. If it was a more steady presence instead of just the four main members of the Terrifics, I might read that on a more regular basis, but that's my taste. What do you guys think of that?
That's an interesting idea.
It is.
Well, who knows, maybe it'll snowball. Maybe the appearance will be enough that it'll get readers' interest and it'll turn into something.
Maybe.
Stranger things have happened. And last up is our general comic and convention news. We're going to talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. And when I say all around the world, obviously the thing on the mind of most people around the world right now is the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And it has seriously started to impact the plans of a lot of things happening everywhere.
Everything.
Here in the U.S., a lot has happened. All of our theme parks have closed. Our restaurants have closed to everything but takeout service. And a large section of our economy has just kind of disappeared. That includes conventions. As a matter of fact, some of the first layoffs we're experiencing here have to do with convention center staff. And one of the latest casualties is WonderCon in Anaheim. The convention that was supposed to take place in California April 10th through 12th has been postponed to an unknown date. They expect to reopen now in the fall. They're one of the conventions that didn't full-on close, though. A number of other conventions, including SakuraCon, has closed. They will not be occurring this year. Neither will DaiCon out here in California. I believe Anime Boston just announced this week that they are not going forward either. You know, it's kind of interesting to have a year where WrestleMania is going to happen without a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot is occurring in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, the local convention here got canceled too. Or, well, postponed until June.
At least it's still happening. As a matter of fact,
Maybe.
DC Comics and Warner Media CEO Jan Stankey sent out a memo to all Warner Media employees instructing them to work from home right now due to the coronavirus. So DC Comics right now may be very loosely staffed with just a few individuals taking care of whatever pages are submitted digitally. Not everything is terrible when it comes to retailers. Dynamite Comics is allowing retailers to return product stock if they can't sell them due to closures or people's inability to get out during this period of self-isolation. That's unusually kind, especially since it's coming from an independent company.
Yeah. How can they afford to do that?
I don't know. Maybe Dynamite has better insurance, or maybe they just have better cash reserves than some of the larger ones. So Dynamite led the charge. The only other company so far that has announced this type of plan is Image Comics. They're also allowing retailers to return stock amid the coronavirus issues. So I applaud companies for taking something proactive. It also, now that you think about it, kind of assists the comic companies as well, because if things can't get out, that means whatever they have on hand is still going to be worth something. It's not just going to sit on shelves and languish.
Mm-hmm.
One convention so far that is unaffected by things because it happens in July is San Diego Comic-Con. As a matter of fact, Hallmark has announced some of the exclusives they plan to debut at this July's convention. This is still supposed to be happening July 22nd through 25th in San Diego, California. And Hallmark has some weird offbeat stuff. They've introduced a probe droid Christmas ornament. The infamous probe droid from Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
Gotcha.
Imperial probe droid is now a limited run Christmas ornament of 3,200 pieces. They also, sorry?
I was saying that would be a bit more fragile than their traditional ornaments.
Maybe. I mean, they're also introducing an 8-bit version of the child from The Mandalorian in a pin.
Okay.
Yeah, the Professor Bogart Snape keepsake ornament, which appears to be Professor Snape in a dress.
Oh, yeah, because the Bogart is Neville Longbottom. He imagines Snape. The Bogart takes the form of the thing you're most afraid of.
Oh.
It's Snape, and then you're supposed to say something. You're supposed to say ridiculous and think of something funny and laugh at it, and that's how you depower it.
Oh, okay.
So he imagines it in one of his grandmother's ridiculous flower print dresses. They just wanted to get him into a dress.
Okay, well, there's a run of 3,350 of those ornaments. They're also putting out a Deadpool Itty Bitty. It's a $10 item, which is just a small plush version of Deadpool. And the last thing they've announced right now is the Tribble keepsake ornament. It is a literal fur ball that you could hang from your tree in a limited run of 3,350 pieces.
I want.
The weird things that get introduced. Let me see. Marvel Comics has a lot to crow about. I mean, the coronavirus may do unknown things to sales, but February being the last full month of retail before things really kind of slow down here, the Diamond Retailers has released the numbers as to overall retailer sales. Mm-hmm. And Marvel Comics had 41.85% of retail share. That's percentage of units.
Wow.
DC Comics came in at second at 29%. Marvel had a full 12% on them. It seems like every time we talk about these numbers, I'm sure somebody at DC has to be fearing for their job at this point.
Yeah.
When it came to units, as far as the particular numbers of comics that were ordered by retailers, Marvel again led the pack at 47.3%. DC Comics came in second at 30.16%. That is a strange disparity between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Both categories, Image Comics came in third, IDW Publishing came in fourth. When it came to retailer market share, Dark Horse Comics came in fifth at 2.93%. But when it came to unit market share, Boom Studios came in higher at 2.64%. I wonder if that has to do with the Power Rangers comics. Boom Studios is the exclusive creator of those comics right now.
Yeah, that seems to be their flagship, basically, that I've seen.
Pretty much. Every time I've run across a Broom Studios booth at a convention, they're always bringing either Power Rangers actors or creators, or comics creators, to do signings and appearances. As far as money spent, it's down a little bit compared to last month, which had a few anniversary issues that were $8, $9, and $10. But versus February of last year, they're actually up quite a bit. As far as dollars, almost 10% more was spent compared to a year ago, even though the increase in units is a little under 3%. But here's the thing where I'm a little confused. Now, Marvel has a huge disparity on DC Comics when it came to both retail and unit shares, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marvel had 41% of unit share, whereas DC had 29%. And as far as that's retail share. And as far as unit share, Marvel Comics had 47.3, whereas DC had 30.16. That's a big gap, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the part I don't understand. When it came to comics that were shipped in the month of February, Marvel shipped 92. DC shipped 102. So DC put out more comics last month, but has significantly fewer sales and orders.
That's not good.
No, I don't like that at all. And when it came to the actual statistics, the top 10 comics sold in the month got worse. If it wasn't for Batman, Marvel would have had a full run of the top 10 comics. And
Yep.
Sorry?
I was just, because, we've always talked about Batman and Superman being their main two boys.
But the thing is, it's not even like event books. I'm talking about Batman number 88 came in at number 8, and Batman number 89, which again is supposed to be the first appearance of Punchline, came in at number 10. 8 and 10 is the best they did. The top comic of last month was Wolverine number 1. The latest version of Wolverine in this new Krakoa era. The top selling comics, or the top comics shipped after that to retailers. X-Men number 6 at number 2. X-Men number 7 at number 3. Detecting a theme so far?
Yeah.
Number 4 was a bit of a surprise to me. Gwen Stacy number 1. Retailers
Really?
ordered a lot of Gwen Stacy. Number 5, giant-size X-Men Jean Grey and Emma Frost number 1. Number 6, Amazing Spider-Man number 39. Number 7, Star Wars Darth Vader number 1. Number 8, as we said, was Batman 88. Number 9, X-Men Fantastic Four number 1. And then number 10 was Batman. Evidently, I can't say what people bought, but retailers are just enjoying the heck out of the latest X-Men line, it appears.
Oh, it's
What?
I'm trying to put my thoughts into words, and that is very hard for me.
Okay.
X-Men has a...
X-Men had a heck of a reinvention 6 months ago.
There's the word.
But at the same time, though, it appears to have just dominated all of a sudden Marvel Comics on a whole. I mean, up until then, I'd say the Avengers had a chokehold on Marvel culture and comics.
Yeah.
But it seems like everything's been ripped away, and all of a sudden it's all about the weirdness on Krakoa.
I think it's a lot of new team-ups and interactions from characters we've known for the longest time in probably the most uncertain situation.
I know, and I appreciate what you're saying. I really do. But we've reviewed a number of comic books here that are new team-ups, new concepts, and everything, and it doesn't quite catch. But for whatever reason, this new version of the X-Men, like I said, I don't know if it translated to readers necessarily, but retailers have definitely stood up and paid attention to the changes. So, you know what? All we can do is keep going forward and see who's ordering what next. Meanwhile, Valiant Comics is getting a new series with Max Bemis called Savage. It's coming out this summer. It is a new solo series following a young hero. And I say hero because he may be nameless. He appears to be a literal savage, has been sent into present-day London after fighting for survival every waking moment in a world that time forgot. But just as the savage is starting to acclimate to current London, the British capital is invaded by prehistoric monsters, leaving Savage as the most capable person to handle this issue. I'm kind of curious on the concept. I don't know, though. It feels like there's odd timing about this coming out not that long after Primal finished its run on Cartoon Network.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, the idea that Savage is now in current London, maybe he's, I don't want to say domesticated, but maybe he's just kind of assimilated into culture. That's a different tack compared to what Primal was, but the concept feels a little too close for my comfort.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see. Meanwhile, Vault Comics is trying to take two great flavors and make them into a single one. They're coming out with a new series called Bleed Them Dry, a ninja vampire tale.
Oh, no.
Pass.
It was created. Yep. Well, wait. It was created in association with Lotus Entertainment, Nagoya TV, and FJ DeSanto. So it's actually being run by different creators from different ethnicities who might actually be able to dig into the cultures here. The series is supposed to debut in June by its creators Hiroshi Kozumi, writer Elliot Rahal, illustrator Dike Ruan, and colorist Miguel Muerto. The designer is Tim Daniel. I don't know. This feels very pulpy. It's one of those things where it's either going to rock or it's going to be a whole lot of cliches.
Man, I'm afraid for the latter.
Oh, you won't know till you read it.
It just sounds like a 90s cliche. What's better, vampires or ninjas? Or pirates or Vikings? Or whatever the two are. It was down to pirates or ninjas, I think, after that.
Look, if you want to find out, just watch The Deadliest Warrior. I'm sure you can stream it nowadays.
That's still
Ninja.
running?
It was Ninja.
No, it ended after 3 seasons.
Oh,
They
okay.
answered it, though. It was Ninja.
But, you know what? I gotta read a couple issues of this only because I'll never know. If I prejudge, I may miss something. I mean, Rat Queen sounded ridiculous till I sat down and actually opened the series.
I was very skeptical about Rat Queens when you told me the rundown, but I was curious enough. I was like, this sounds interesting, but it could be campy, but let me read it anyway. Oh my goodness, I love it. I need more.
Like I said, I just got to sit down and try. I can't just think it's terrible simply because I don't like the synopsis.
That's fair.
Another thing that's way outside my wheelhouse, though, is coming out from Dynamite Entertainment. They're relaunching Betty Page.
Really?
Yeah, the pinup star is getting... Betty Page was a pinup star in the 1950s. She was notorious for doing a whole lot of, like, calendars and catalog shoots. And she was one of the first people to appear on film in her underwear, as far as I know.
Yeah, she's like the original pinup icon.
Yeah. And the latest Betty Page comics have often tried to reinvent her as a super spy or something else. The new Betty Page #1 from Dynamite Comics is following the woman who's known as the Tease from Tennessee, their words not mine, as she's trying to make her a name for herself in 1950s Hollywood. It's actually like fictionalizing her career instead of making something else out of it.
Interesting.
They did add a bit of drama, though. In this story, she's going to have to clear her name after being suspected in a murder. So it sounds like Betty Page is going to be involved in an old-fashioned noirish tale.
Okay.
I kind of like this spin on it. It's just adding a bit of drama to the woman that's, you know, kind of well-known to students of pop culture. Let me see. I don't have information as to when this is coming out, though. I may have to add it to my poll just because. Betty Page was one of those names that came up when I was a kid and I was going through puberty and people were trying to explain things to me.
I always think of her like as like fashion and style, like the 1950s.
Oh, in the 50s she was at the
style.
forefront of style, both adult and contemporary. And she had such an unusual figure because she didn't have that kind of hourglass figure everybody was looking for. She was much more natural.
Yeah, but she was also more curvy.
Yeah. She was born in 1923 and was mostly a model during the 1950s. She'd been an influence in comics for a while. Comics creator Robert Kahinger has credited Betty Page as being the basis for Poison Ivy.
I can see that.
She had a one-shot titled Betty Page Comics. It was produced in Dark Horse Comics back in 1996. Then Dynamite launched a title around the character in 2017. This new series is going to be written by Carla Pacheco and illustrated by Vincenzo Federici. Betty Page #1 is supposed to come out this June from Dynamite Comics. I may have to check this out, if only because it's very different from most of the other things I read on my own.
I'll be honest, I had to Google her up.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard this person before, and my first thought is she's the inspiration for Veronica.
There may have been
Maybe
some truth to
loosely.
that. Betty Page was she was iconic. She was kind of the first to do a lot of things in her particular style.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy, is creating another spin-off. Dark Horse Comics has announced that Mike Mignola is working alongside Christopher Golden on a series of Lady Baltimore. It's due to launch this summer. They're teaming up with an artist named Bridget Connell I'm not familiar with. The series will also feature covers by a Hugo Award winner illustrator, Abigail Larson. Lady Baltimore is supposed to take place 13 years after the events of another series, Baltimore the Red Kingdom, the final Baltimore series. This will be a new miniseries following a character named Sophia Volk. She hails from Estonia, and Sophia has decided to embrace her destiny as Lady Baltimore during the early days of World War II. The official synopsis reads, quote, "Her name was Sophia Volk. Once she lived in an Estonian village before the evil came. But when Europe erupted with the early battles of World War II, it was time for Sophia Volk to embrace her destiny as Lady Baltimore. In time, Sophia Volk became Lord Baltimore's most trusted ally, but without him she must take on the fight herself. Can she fight monsters without becoming a monster herself?" Unquote. And independents are just creating a whole lot of things I would like to know more about.
Yeah.
Lady Baltimore fighting monsters in early World War II, I don't know why, but that just tugs at the creative parts of my brain.
It is interesting.
It's going to be a 5-issue miniseries by Dark Horse Comics. Issue number 1 goes on sale June 10th. Yeah, this may not be one of those comics I buy simply because I think it'll go up in value. This could be one of the ones I seek out simply because it sounds cool. Dark Horse is also releasing a new comic in July of 2020 based on Vampire the Masquerade.
Ooh, really?
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not Dark Horse Comics. This is being released by Vault and Paradox Comics. They're teaming up to produce this series. It's going to come out, July 2020, taking place in the World of Darkness version of the Twin Cities, following 2 stories. The first centers around Cecily Bain, a Camarilla courier in Minneapolis who works for an elite vampire clan. The second story is about an anarch courtier on the outskirts of the city investigating a murder. Both stories will eventually connect to unveil a citywide conspiracy that impacts all vampires. Each issue is going to feature Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition RPG manual materials, helping readers play along or create their own chronicles to coincide with the series.
That's cool. I know a lot of people that are in that RPG.
Well, that's a nice bit of interactivity, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it's very rare that a comic book seeks to not just entertain the readers, but give them a way to follow along with their own potential characters or storylines.
Yeah, and then they can go join a local chapter of Vampire the Masquerade.
Okay, don't get wild here.
Hey, I'll be as wild as I want, thank you very much.
The Vampire the Masquerade comic is being co-written by Tim Seeley, Teenie Howard, and Blake Howard. It's going to be drawn by Devmalia Pramanik, Nathan Godin, and colored by Addison Duke with covers by Aaron Campbell. I'm not a Vampire the Masquerade person. I am not a vampire fan in general. But I do like Tim Seeley, Blake Howard, and Teenie Howard. That may be enough to make me sit down and at least read a couple issues to see what they got here.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of lore and plots. I've never played, but I've sat in a session, and I kind of know a little bit about the factions, the drama. Don't cross these people if you're with this group. It reminds me a lot of like 13th century French court, a lot of intrigue, a lot of murders, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But it's cool. It's like in a supernatural setting.
Well, maybe I'll read the series simply because it'll give me a window into these characters without me having to delve deep enough where I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a good segue into like bringing casual readers or casual observers into the lore and kind of explaining it so that they can go into the game.
There's actually 2 vampire series that were announced in this week's Independent Comics. The other one is by Image Comics, and I'm going to have to add a bleep here because this is a family-friendly show. But the literal title of this Image Comics series is Dracula, motherfucker!
Really?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
a graphic novel that's going to reimagine Bram Stoker's Dracula across 2 very different eras. 1889 Vienna and 1994 Los Angeles.
Is it going to be Samuel Jackson? Because I'm just kind of picturing him in that diction.
It is a mash of classic monster movies and blaxploitation in this graphic novel.
Good.
It's being written by Alex DeCampi and drawn and colored by Erica Henderson. The book, and I'm going to have to refer to it as that because I can't try to repeat that name over and over, it's being described as a psychological horror influenced by horror anime, pulp detective novels, and blaxploitation film posters. That doesn't sound like it should work, but I am so eminently curious about how this could work.
I'm still going to hear him in Samuel Jackson's voice in my head.
You do you.
Oh, I'm sorry, now all I can think is, I'm tired of these mother-humping Draculas on this mother-humping plane!
Yes. Vamps on a plane. Oh, man.
There's just something compelling about the cheesy characters of blaxploitation meeting vampires. That sounds funny to me.
Mm-hmm.
According to the writer, quote, I wanted to bring this pulp fantasia with a sensibility of horror anime with its love of transformation and the non-corporeal to push the element of man as a monster in directions specifically suited to sequential art. Things like the abstract portrayal of Alucard or Pride in FMA Brotherhood and the use of super flat art in Madoka Magica were tremendously inspirational in this book, especially as that use of flatness dovetails nicely with the work of Gustav Klimt with the book's 1889 prologue, and with the late 1960s pop art and the psychedelic liquid light projections of the Joshua Light Show, unquote. Wow, somebody has thought really hard on this.
A lot.
I like the concept, though. It sounds like he's really, really tried to figure out how all these art styles intersect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't say it's a guarantee, but yeah, I may have to add this to my list just to see what this is all about.
It's just interesting enough to pique my interest, too.
Yeah. And last up when it comes to independent comic news, I don't know. Are you disappointed that it's taken the Orville so long to come out with a 3rd season?
Yes.
I mean, I know it was moved to Hulu after the Disney buyout of Fox. It seems like Disney wanted to take it proprietary, possibly to keep too much of an argument with CBS about the closeness of the series to its progenitor Star Trek, and just make sure the 2 stay separate. However, I'm sure that the buyout creating Seth MacFarlane's opening to get out of his exclusive contract with Fox didn't help, on top of which the coronavirus has slowed everything down as far as entertainment. A lot of production has stopped. If you're as irritated as I am that there hasn't been a 3rd season yet, take heart, because Dark Horse Comics is putting out additional comics of what they call the Orville Season 2.5 to fill in the gap between seasons. And they literally space the stories to fit in the gap between Season 2 and 3. It's going to consist of two-issue episodes being written by David Goodman, who is an executive producer on The Orville Show, alongside artist David Cabeza and colorist Michael Atiyeh. They previously worked on Season 1.5 for Dark Horse, when The Orville was previously out of production. The first episode is going to be called Launch Day. The first issue is launching on June 3rd. The synopsis is, quote, when the seemingly hostile Krill ships cross into Union space, the Orville intercepts. Captain Mercer learns that they're en route to a planet that left the Union decades ago under mysterious circumstances. Scans have discovered a moon-sized construct above the planet, and the Krill intend a preemptive strike against the presumed weapon. But what is it? Unquote. That sounds like high-concept sci-fi. I like that.
Yay.
So if you're interested in more Orville stories but can't wait for more TV, you can pick this up in June.
Doing it.
Can't believe we found so many independent comics that just piqued Joanna's interest.
I know, right?
Yeah. The subject of this week is the Wonder Twin series by Wonder Comics. Wonder is a a mini imprint within the DC umbrella. And this is the story of the characters that were born in the 1970 Super Friends show, and probably the most notable damsels in distress on the show, as they try to handle life on Earth for the first time ever in DC Comics continuity. Well, at least as actual characters. They were kind of a joke and cameo characters in other series. The writer of this is Mark Russell. The art is by Stephen Byrne. The letters are by Dave Sharp. Variants by Dustin Nguyen. And when I proposed this series, it was kind of half-hearted. We needed a DC series. This sounded offbeat and possibly interesting. I didn't expect to actually enjoy myself as I read these comics.
Me either, but I did.
I had a rough start, but I'm getting into it.
It's very kitschy, and it very much leans into the idea that nobody thinks much of either of these characters, whether they be characters in the DC universe or even comics fans, and just completely has fun with it.
And it, of course, there were the groan-worthy moments, but it was really, really funny.
Yeah, I mean, they were very much written not just to induce groans, but just those groans of, oh no, I can't believe you actually did that. Like when, in the first parts of the story here, Zan is trying to explain his planet, his home planet of Exor, to all of his fellow Earthen students, and in the middle of trying to explain social classes, he explains that every time there's a thunderstorm on Exor, the people or the adults on his planet go through what's called the Thunderlust, which causes people to shapeshift and start to have physical relationships at completely random as long as the thunder keeps sounding. And as much as the teacher is trying to gently get him to stop, I love the stunned look on all the students' faces as they're trying to understand what he's talking about.
They went from extremely bored and napping in class to what?
When I came across it, my thoughts are, this is someone's fantasy.
Well, it almost sounds like
fan fiction.
I really like the breakup in it. You know, Zan is up there with index cards. Men become women, women become animals, and the night throbs with their pleasure. Okay, Zan, many bodily fluids are involved. All right, thanks, Zan. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you. But Zan and Jayna, for unknown reasons, are not welcome on their home planet. I know that Superman said in his exposition he was doing their father a favor. But as far as I know, they never actually detailed what they could have done that could have gotten, I'm not going to say well-mannered, but at least a couple well-intentioned kids thrown off their home planet.
Maybe had something to do with how they grew up or how they were progressing. They never tell you, and I was reading to see if that was alluded to any more in depth, but
not thus far.
They dangle it and then they don't have to follow through so far.
Yeah, and I actually enjoy Superman standing there with Wonder Woman and Batman in the first issue trying to explain them. You know, what did you say their names were? Zan and Jayna. And what are their superpowers? Changelings. Well, that could be useful. Yeah, well, he can, or she can only change into animals, and he morphs into, water. Water, yeah. And there's Wonder Woman. That's underwhelming. I am underwhelmed. Which is a fair description as to how most people think of these characters if they have any memories at all of the original cartoons from, like, the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just love the reaction of Batman. You could have cleared it with us first. Well, I know. I just figured I'd do the right thing first and work out the details later. That's when Wonder Woman pats Batman on the back. Oh, that's usually Batman's house style.
I love that line.
All right, that got a chuckle out of me.
I especially like how the writer in this series, Mark Russell, when he wrote the Trinity, anytime they were together, it was Wonder Woman who was the one who was getting the goat of either of the guys here. That's like a first.
Mm-hmm.
She was constantly ribbing at them, and it was just hilarious. And then there's Superman trying to explain what the Hall of Justice is to the Wonder Twins, and trying to explain that the Hall of Justice is the nerve center to make sure that they don't over-respond to things. And then you see the one burglar who smashed through a window, had a backpack of a few things, and half the Justice League is standing there waiting for him.
Yeah.
And then
I love the illustrations for the explanations.
Yeah, and they also try to make sure.
The frame was really funny.
Yeah, they try to make sure that they also make sure to send heroes to the type of the type of issues that they can actually handle. And then you see the black lightning on a cell phone next to a harbor as a giant squid has 2 boats, and he's like, and do you by any chance know what happens when electricity comes in contact with water?
Yes,
Uh-huh. I see. And what, pray tell, is Aquaman up to?
That was my all-time favorite panel from the entire run of what we read.
I don't know. I laughed at that, but I laughed unexpectedly hard when Superman leaves him in the final part. And this is kind of our old control room. It's a relic from the past. It used to be the nerve center of the Hall of Justice. We used to call this our supercomputer before, cell phones. Now we mostly use it to listen to music.
Yeah. Basically an MP3 player. A very large MP3 player that takes up an entire wall and has some sort of sentience to it.
Yeah, but the next page was also the moment when you realize how unacclimated Zan is to Earth when Hawkman is sitting at that computer. Superman, we just discovered a body in the park, and Zan just pipes over with, congratulations!
Oh, that's great.
And that body looks like it's a pilgrim who's been time displaced and shot in the back with something. But the immediate assumption is that Mr. Mxyzptlk is responsible, the imp from the 5th dimension that is usually characterized by a small man in a bowler hat.
Mm-hmm.
And he tends to harass Superman just because he's trying to prove his weird superiority. It's one of those classic comic book tropes. It's just become the standard.
Yeah.
So
he's not a very good villain.
Yeah, but the Wonder Twins' job here is interns. They're just supposed to help keep things kind of running steady while other people are out doing the actual superhero stuff. When the Justice League leaves and they start fighting Mr. Mxyzptlk, I loved the new version of the supercomputer.
Yes.
Which is a pretty high-class AI for, 1994. And when Jayna tries to access it just to figure out if they can help the Justice League in some way, the screen goes yellow and it pops up with this weird, 8-bit face.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, supercomputer? Oh my god, that's adorable! Nobody's called me that in years!
Yes.
In your database, do you have any record or mention of a transdimensional animal, something I might shapeshift into that can drag somebody back into the 5th dimension? Oh gee, I'm afraid not. Would you like to hear some Philip Glass? But, oh god, I love Zan's idea on how to get popular at school by joining the hockey team.
And I love that he actually accomplishes these things just in different ways than he intended.
I'm not sure he intended anything else. I mean, he joined the hockey team because he forms the ice that they play on.
Mm-hmm.
He looks so proud of himself. Coach says, I'm indispensable.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to get a cool nickname and an offbeat pet, and for some reason he imagines walking to school with an alligator. He's just an adorable rube in the series. But also, Zan is trying to create a catchphrase out of total refreshment because he transforms into water. That just sounds so wrong.
So wrong, especially when he pops up out of a puddle and headbutts someone in the groin.
He decided to race Jayna in their alternative form, so he drops down a drain, and he got lost in the sewer. Meanwhile, while he's running on the track team, there's a thunderstorm outside. Unfortunately, Zan became a man that day.
And is this a euphemism for arousal?
It's not a euphemism. He suffered his first thunderlust, just like he was talking about in class. The thunder struck, so he was uncontrollably randy all of a sudden.
Right. Right.
I'm almost glad they didn't tell us how that resolved, because I was terrified to find out what he was going to do in the next few minutes.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Thunderlust became his new nickname around the school.
Thunderlust. Hey, there are worse high school nicknames.
The page after, though, when they actually get back to the Hall of Justice and Jayna is sitting down with Wonder Woman, though. I mean, so what? He got his first Thunderlust. I can't believe that's the first time it ever happened on this planet. Actually, I think it is. I've never seen him humiliated like this. He's usually so inexplicably confident. It's actually a very special time in his life. The Thunderlust, and that's when Zan walks in. Oh God, does everyone know? And Superman's right behind him. No, what? Zan got his Thunderlust. Oh God, this isn't happening.
And he's just like, stop talking about me, please.
And of course, that's when Batman enters the room. The tachyon trap is ready. What's going on in here? Zan became a man today. Oh, just let me die.
And now the whole Justice League knows. It's just like, oh, stop.
Well, what they do afterwards to make him feel better is kind of, I don't know, endearing?
Yeah, Superman and Batman told their own embarrassing stories about high school. They each had them. And that's when they just kind of let Zan know that, high school is rough on everybody.
Clark's was horrible.
Oh, yeah. When he tried to impress a woman, tried to act casual, lean on a wall, but that wall just happened to be the door to the women's ladies' room. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, ladies. Whoops.
The exact line that Russell wrote for Superman, though. High school is a buffet line of humiliation, Zan. Everybody gets a plate.
Yep, that was a good one.
And then there's Bruce Wayne's version of a solution. Besides, after you graduate, you'll probably never even see those people again. Just a little perspective, kid.
True.
Yeah, but...
Wonder Woman calling him BG after that.
BG.
And all this is just in the first issue. And
there was a lot to unpack.
There was.
In a good way.
But even the fact that Mr. Mitsvicieslis, and I'm sure I didn't pronounce that correctly, he popped into the Justice League headquarters because he knew that the heroes would be elsewhere. He's trying to scare the Wonder Twins. And then Jayna just asked the supercomputer to play what happened when he answered her question of who are you and play it backwards so that he was banished to his fifth dimension again.
Because technically it was his own voice saying it.
Yes. And even the writer was self-aware at this point. It's not supposed to work like that!
And then he's like, wait, this was the problem person? Was that the guy that we were warned about?
Yeah.
All nonchalant.
But did you notice that Jayna never dropped her coffee?
Nope. You don't drop a precious commodity like that.
But the second issue, I was kind of worried there would be a drop-off after the first, because the first was just funny. But the second one was better when we were introduced to one of the central villains here. Scrambler. Who does sound like a nightmare at like a McDonald's McMuffin or something. But he has the ability to switch his mind with anybody he comes in eye contact with. And he pretty much used a rabbit season, duck season ruse to get out of his jail cell. I mean, I'm sure you guys could see it coming. It was just amazing to watch it unfold.
Mm-hmm.
I find it hard to believe they hired someone that stupid.
The thing is, though, this series, from the second issue on, has some interesting commentaries about society, what it's doing, how it's handling things, and how stupid it all is.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it without just kind of preaching or just beating you over the head with it.
Yeah, they're not being condescending. They're just using the Wonder Twins as a foil to observe all this and then ask reasonable questions. It's very surprising. I mean, it's no surprise that the prisons don't work. I mean, they're LexCorp subsidiaries.
Yeah, which I feel like they were... That's really on the nose, don't you think?
Yeah, more than a bit. Especially since they titled the place Lexicon Prison and Call Center.
Yeah.
But the scene where Beast Boy is trying to give the Wonder Twins a talk, meanwhile the whole time he's doing this sort of take-off on Hostess fruit pie commercials from the back of comic books in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
I was laughing so hard I did not know I had that volume. The whole villain Jacko bin, I had to do a double check and make sure I didn't miss some part of DC history with this villain.
Right.
And then the ineptitude of the guards at Lexicon. I mean, Scrambler walks away from the prison, goes to an old broken phone booth, hits some kind of secret code, and gets a backdoor holographic conversation with Lex Luthor. You see the prison guards that are looking for him are just two guys on Segways who haven't left the parking lot. And refuse to leave the parking lot. But Scrambler's not a high enough villain for Lex to actually let back into the Legion of Doom. And I would have to do some research to find out if Scrambler was ever important enough to be a member of the Legion of Doom. Instead, he's led to a former toy factory, which is the headquarters of the League of Annoyance.
Which to me is like a step down from the Evil League of Evil.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was meant that way, because its membership is pathetic.
I bet they don't even have henchmen.
I bet they don't even have a coffee machine.
How dare they not?
Well, I just looked up the Scrambler, and this is his first appearance.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm a little disappointed by
I
that.
had no recollection of him, but he seemed like he would have been
Been
one
created.
of those campy ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
these are a whole bunch of 1970s inspired supervillains, like the Praying Mantis, who really doesn't seem to exude any sort of powers or special abilities or even real competence as the leader of the League of Annoyance. I was actually scared of Amphetamine, because every time she appeared, she did a ton of work last night because evidently she didn't sleep, and I could guess
She never
why.
sleeps.
Yeah.
Methamphetamines. Crystal meth makes you do stuff lots faster.
Amphetamine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Amphetamine is her name. Amphetamine.
Yeah.
But I actually felt really bad for Count Druncula.
Yeah.
He is a vampire in the
His
classical
monologue
sense.
was so great.
Yeah, he is a vampire in the classic sense. Yeah, he has the cape, the red vest, and the puffy shirt, and the whole deal. But his actual name is Baron Nightblood, but because he has a bit of a drinking problem, and I don't mean blood drinking, everyone calls him Count Druncula.
Yeah.
And he laid down a speech that was a combination of pathetic and a little close to home when he's describing how hard it is to avoid biting people in this current age who have had any sort of alcohol in their system, because if he bites one, he just feels compelled to find somebody who just left a club and has so many other things in his system. Why am I feeling bad for this man?
I think it's the idea.
Also, he's very adamant that he's 30 days sober.
I know, but I love the fact that all they want Baron Nightblood to do is bite people because he's a vampire. That's supposed to be his thing. It's like, that is not all I do.
He's like, there's so much more to me than the blood drinking thing, guys. Come on.
Oh, we all respect your personal journey, Baron. It's just that, well, being a vampire is sort of the whole reason you're here. Fine, if it matters so much to you, I'll just go out and bite some people. Real creative. That is such a meta commentary on not just addiction, but peer pressure and comic books in general. It made my head spin. It is so many cliches wrapped together, but somehow none of it is talking down to you.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, when Baron Nightblood is outside a steakhouse, he purposely picks a place where they don't serve alcohol. He's getting ready to bite somebody, and the puddle underneath him came to life. And Zan yelled total refreshment again while he's ramming his head into the Baron's butt. I mean, that image is just... I needed an adult for about 5 minutes there.
Bad timing.
Gosh, yeah, but Zan... I like that Zan was kind of holding his own, but not really fighting the Baron. Then he just says, the Baron's got him up against a wall. By the way, you're nowhere near strong enough to fight a vampire. I know. That's why I brought my sister. And he immediately transmutes to water.
And then in comes the sister and, like...
As a gorilla.
Pulverizes him.
Yeah, she comes in as a full-blown gorilla and just launches him into the sky with a punch.
Brutalizes.
And then when Baron's all knocked out and kind of damp because of Zan's powers, he just fades out saying, please just leave me alone. And I like that even Zan, the guy who's not very self-conscious, looks at his sister and says, okay, that was sort of messed up. And, God, I mean, in this issue, at the end of it, Zan gets a pet monkey, which is like very much like Gleek in the comic books, except this one is a monkey, not an annoying chatterbox. But at the same time, when they go to pick up Baron Nightblood the next day, it turns out that the place they dropped him off was another LexCorp holding tank, who didn't have room for him in the prison, so they left him in the drunk tank.
Yeah, which what we know about him is a problem.
Yeah.
And he's drunk off his cape, and everybody in the drunk tank is drained.
Yeah. You know, and he's screaming at the Wonder Twins, I was 30 days sober! I actually felt terrible for him.
I did too, because that's something that, you know, people with the addiction struggle with, and so it's a real thing. It's not, you know, making fun of somebody who struggles with alcoholism.
Yeah.
He's
It's
really struggling, but he's also like this kind of pathetic character that
the issue was
you're laughing, but then you're like, oh, poor guy.
Yeah, the issue is a surprising twisted mirror on the issue of alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
But issue number 3, Jayna actually makes a friend with the one super smart person in the school known as Polymath, and oh man, I almost hit my head on my desk with that one.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, are you really the...
Yeah, you knew something was coming, you just didn't know what.
Mm-hmm.
But the monologue Superman gave the Wonder Twins, because after their visit to the prison and their adventures with Baron Nightblood, they just don't understand how the world works. And then Superman basically explains to the both of them that the best ability you can have in being a superhero isn't flight or invulnerability or shapeshifting. It's seeing everything wrong with the world and not going crazy.
Yeah, that was pretty profound.
That was chilling, especially coming from
Yeah.
this guy who's supposed to be able to solve just about any problem that requires muscle across the planet.
Right.
Well, you gotta imagine he can see more of it than anyone else.
Yeah,
True.
I think this series also echoed the odd positivity youth can have when Zan heard that whole thing and he just says, so, kindness is how you save the world. Which is a little bit naive, but at the same time, so hopeful. And we also meet Polymath's father, Philomath, who evidently is into Lex Luthor deep and also owns the patents on his invention, so he can't take them with him if he decides to quit.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Lex says that he can earn the money he needs to pay off Luthor in a year or two if he goes to this other thing he wants him to do, which is the League of Annoyance.
Of course.
Yeah, Philomath is supposed to replace Baron Nightblood now that he's in prison. And the Malingerer was something new. I guess he was just in the hospital for a little while with a name like the Malingerer.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like his own
first introduction to
it seems
every
like
one of these people.
his only real ability is to heal slowly. I guess. It's kind of odd to see Scrambler as the most ambitious person in the room, and yet nobody's listening to him. He wants to get $5,000 from the League of Annoyance to go to a presidential gala so that he can meet the president face to face, because you get that with the ticket, use his powers to mind swap with the president and become the most powerful man in the United States, which is a surprisingly straightforward gig.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really easy to do for him.
Yes. But the League
However-
of Annoyance doesn't even have $5,000. They don't even have the money to pay for Count Druncula's lawyer right now.
And the Phase 2 desk is very palpable.
Yeah. Yeah. Scrambler was so irritated by these guys and their inability to just get galvanized that he walks out on them. And it's in this issue that while Zan is sleeping, we find out that Gleek has a rather bad backstory.
This poor monkey.
Yeah. He's blue, which marks him as unusual, but he doesn't have any special powers. He was just a circus monkey that was forced to ride a bicycle and jump over fire. Or through it, even. Meanwhile,
Commentary on animal cruelty?
a little bit. I mean, the whole time, though, the MC is monologuing and talking about all the terrors and horrors this thing is about to go through, and oh god, just that scene where we end the flashback, and then there's Zan with his arm around the monkey, just sleeping soundly, and the monkey's crying.
Yeah, poor thing.
What the frick? Just like I didn't expect to enjoy the Wonder Twins, I didn't expect to feel for Gleek, of all characters here.
Right.
And then there is the odd moment where the League of Annoyance has broken into Zan and Jayna's apartment to kidnap them, and they're trying to stuff them in giant plastic bags.
That made no sense to me. Like, I understood the power dampening cases or whatever, but it's really just Ziploc bags for people.
Yeah. I mean, they got Jayna into a bag, which somehow neutralizes her powers, and Zan transformed into water and swept most everybody out of the apartment except for Praying Mantis, who jumped up and grabbed the ceiling fan. But when Zan transformed back, apologized for the water damage, and was knocked out because Mantis landed on top of him when the fan broke. I did not expect that.
It was interesting.
And let alone when Mantis and Aunt Amphetamine get the Wonder Twins back to their lair, they try to go for an old-fashioned villain death trap.
Mm-hmm.
They found an industrial chipper shredder, and they're arguing over whether or not to build a conveyor belt to drag them into the chipper shredder just for drama's sake. But then they're rescued by poor little Gleek, who is so, I guess you could say, enamored with Zan's affection for him that he actually jumps on a toy bicycle from the factory and just rides his little heart out to buy them enough or buy himself enough time to undo one of the bags so the twins can escape.
I was definitely picturing Danger Zone playing in the background.
I don't know. I was kind of imagining a remix of My Bicycle by Queen.
That would have been, yeah, that would have worked too.
But let alone when Gleek frees the Wonder Twins from the bags, Zan transforms into a wave and Jayna transforms into a shark. I was waiting for some character that looks like Ian Ziering to go sweeping through this image. But, I don't know, the third issue just kind of reiterates the need for positivity in young people's life, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth issue is kind of the setup for a few different things when Jayna is asked out for the first time in her life by a young boy, and it turns out he's an aspiring supervillain.
He's really a douchebag.
Yeah, he's a hyper-conservative, old-fashioned, toxic jock kind of character, and he calls himself Red Flag.
I
That was
pumped on
yeah,
that so
I was
hard.
Like, you
I'm
think?
I'm sure that was intentional. I mean, Red Flag was not meant to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Joker.
Look, it's still not as bad as Snowflake and Safe Place or Safe Space.
A lot of the names in here are pretty bad.
I really like the image of the supervillain mixer that Red Flag was working. You know, the image of all these characters like Gigantia drinking a bottle of champagne like it was a beer, Professor Pig just unknowingly gutting one of the other villains in the room because he could, Joker's daughter and the Rainbow Raider just talking down there up front. And then there's a Scarecrow who's gassing some poor person and just saying, "It's Kiwi scented, see?"
Yeah. Very unusual.
And then you got Riddler and Mr. Freeze doing something.
I'm not sure that's Riddler. I'm not sure who that is. He looks like the ventriloquist.
Mm-hmm.
He's too big to be the ventriloquist.
He's too big to be the Riddler.
Clue Master?
No, I don't. Maybe it's Toy Man.
Clue Master's in orange.
Maybe it's Toy Man.
Toy Man, yeah, that could be it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But...
There's all kinds of odd personalities here. Red Flag, though, was just the kind of ridiculous levity I needed in the middle of all this. He was so proud of himself for his ridiculous cosplay outfit. He wasn't even bothering to hide. But unfortunately, that's where Polymath followed Jayna to and found out that her father was a supervillain instead of being a genius scientist. And Zan was on a date with a girl who was on the rebound.
Mm-hmm.
And that turned out so bad because they ran into the ex-boyfriend at the movies who sat next to them during and just apologized to his ex.
And was trying to get her back.
Yeah. And
on a date.
But Zan wasn't even batting an eye. He even offered popcorn to the guy while he was crying and talking to her.
He's just a little out of touch.
The movie they were watching, though, some kind of version of Hamlet with some time-lost weirdo that had an automatic rifle.
No, that was on a stage play. No,
that was a stage play because I was pretty sure they're in a movie screen.
They are on a movie screen, but the movie kind of ended on a stage play with them dressed up as Hamlet characters.
Ah, okay.
There was a movie poster in a previous panel that showed this movie.
See, I made the wrong assumption because I saw that and just assumed, okay, so this is a movie with really bad special effects. I thought it was a Riff Tracks worthy thing or something.
It might still be.
But the odd thing was when Zan met up with Jayna later, he thought his date was great because everybody left happy. He didn't leave with a girl, but evidently he was just fine making people's lives better.
And leaving with a friend. And he had actually a really good explanation, which kind of was touching. And you're like, wow, you're not an idiot. You actually get it.
Yeah.
Actually,
he's like, go ahead.
I think he may have just picked up on what Batman and Superman just kind of told him told him when they kind of shared their embarrassing moments in high school. It's like, don't worry about it. You'll just blow over. You probably never remember these people.
Well, it's just one of those cases where, unlike a lot of other people on a date, Zan's goal isn't a physical relationship or encounter of any sort. His goal is just make life better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he's like, well, thinking about high school relationships, I probably would have broken up with her in a few weeks, but now this way, we're always going to be friends.
It's an interesting outlook, and I love that Zan walked away from Jayna with a quick fist bump, which activates her abilities, and Jayna ghosted her villain wannabe paramour by transforming into a cheetah and running as soon as his back was turned.
TTFN.
The fifth issue, Polymath is still dealing with, I guess you could say, her father's bad turn in life, while the Scrambler explains his weird history to Philomath, which almost makes him, I don't know, not relatable, but pitiable. He's a failed stage magician who just couldn't figure out what else to do with his life. And now he has a plan that requires Philo's help because he wants to change things, but he's not very specific on things. Meanwhile, Zan and Jayna have dared the remaining parts of the League of Annoyance to a fight in the local zoo, which Jayna considers home turf for them. And she's not wrong. Between the plumbing in the zoo and the all the animals around, they could hide just about anywhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And when Jayna comes rocketing out as as a kangaroo with a koala in her pouch, I almost laughed at that. But that's when we met, or that's when we got a good look at the final member here, and I keep forgetting her name.
Cell phone Sylvia,
yeah, thank you. She's carrying a Kryptonian device that she uses as a cell phone, but every time she's afraid of someone, it zaps them and they disappear, which is, when it happens to the koala, was just awful. I mean, it looks like a disintegration. And Sylvia, man, Sylvia has a lot of demons in her head, and I don't mean that, I don't mean that she has a lot of things that drives her. I mean, she's afraid of literally everything. Animals, minorities, basically anything that isn't, Christian white people, she is just as scared of.
Mm-hmm.
Which is another
She's one
strange
of those
commentary on
people.
Yeah, it's another strange commentary in society that the writers have managed to work in here without really being overt about it.
Mm-hmm.
But Cell Phone Sylvia is the only one that get away. The Malinger and Red Flag are both sent to prison for the time being. And Sylvia is trying to regather whomever she can in the League of Annoyance, but she's trying to quit. And before she does that, the door suddenly opens, and there's an African-American's hand on it, so she freaks out and points the cell phone, but it's Philomath, who's trying to quit himself. Who doesn't get time to explain that before he's zapped by the mysterious cell phone. And the disheartening part wasn't the fact that Philo was suddenly gone and presumed dead. It was what happens afterwards with the Spin campaign.
Yeah.
Where Lex Luthor sends Sylvia onto a number of talk shows so that she can explain her side. And like with a lot of recent strange shootings by police of African-American individuals, there's no one to really explain what happened from the perspective of the victim. Just the person who felt so scared that they had to shoot whomever it was that walked through, for good or for evil.
Right.
And they even had a kind of a tongue-in-cheek version of pundit shows like Fox and Friends or The View, of a bunch of idiotic characters arguing amongst each other, who end up arguing more about semantics than the actual issue.
Right.
And one of them was even something called the Punditron 5000, who chimed in with, "You are all weak and emotional. As a being of pure logic, I conclude that the Earth woman was correct in disintegrating her fellow humanoid. Can Punditron plug his book now?" That's one of those things that somehow came off as both hilarious and very sad in the same moment.
Yeah.
And the final scene where everyone declares that Cell Phone Sylvia did the right thing in shooting somebody she didn't know for reasons that she didn't understand, and she's surrounded by a bunch of bald white people. That was a huge facepalm, but unfortunately it's very reflective of current America.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing we do find out is that Cell Phone Sylvia's cell phone doesn't disintegrate people. It's a Phantom Zone projector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, when you see like the little playing card, whatever it's shown in like Superman, where they're trapped in like a mirror.
You see them behind like the one window they have to the regular universe.
Yeah.
And according to the people here, Cell Phone Sylvia has a serious problem getting scared at African American people. And possibly one Native American. But this drives Polly Math to call the Scrambler because of her despondency and tell her that she's in on his plot. And the Scrambler's plan is he's going to use the internet to randomly scramble 1 million people on Earth, and if they don't make significant changes to make life better for every single person on it, he's going to scramble them all. His idea is that the people in power will have to make changes because they won't know if they're going to be someone completely different tomorrow. Which is another one of those things that sounds stupid, but when you put a little thought into it, it's like, wow, that is actually nuanced and brilliant. How can you prepare if you don't know who you're going to be tomorrow?
True.
You know, the only thing you can do is level the playing field for everybody. And Jayna figures out that because the Scrambler's technique in issue 6 would require the internet to be used in a creative way, she has to go see her friend Polly, who wants really nothing to do with her. Polly's lost her mother to supervillains, her father to supervillains, and she's had enough with the current structure where she can't even get a decent amount of justice for people doing bad things. And the unfortunate thing is Jayna actually keeps Polly's secret all the way up through the 30-day timeline they have to try to find the Scrambler. Jayna keeps the secret, but it turns out Zan actually paid attention to everything that happened in the prior 5 issues, and because of his misadventures, he came up with a technique where he dispersed himself in water form far enough that he could send a molecule to every structure in the local area. And when I say local area, I mean basically everywhere in the city. Until he found where the Scrambler was hiding, and the Justice League went to, arrest the villains. And that's a strange moment when Zan pulled off something brilliant, but potentially the world paid for it. All the changes that people were making to level the playing field to make sure everybody had a fair chance at life, of course, because the Scrambler and Polly were found, were no longer necessary. They were all scrapped. It's a very strange moment. Zan made Employee of the Month at the Hall of Justice.
I love all the photos on the wall.
I know. Green Lantern, Black Lightning, The Flash, Zan, and somebody named Pete.
Who looked maybe like a janitor or an IT guy?
I thought maybe he was supposed to be a joke on the Pete from Deadpool 2.
Oh, yeah.
But, the Scrambler's back in prison in the first... And was it the guard tells him he gets one phone call and then he's pretty much locked up forever, and the Scrambler asked to use an email instead. And, by the end of the 6 issues, I was really surprised. I was wrapped up in this story.
Yep.
I actually want to read the second volume and find out how all this finishes. I don't know if there's going to be future Wonder Twins comics, but the twins themselves have now popped up in the latest comics of Young Justice, and that appears to be where they're going to be seen from here on out. They have now appeared in that series along with the current version of Dial H for Hero and Naomi. So Young Justice is turning into a true ensemble book at this point. And even though they both came out from the same imprint, I'm really surprised how much more I liked Wonder Twins compared to Young Justice. This feels way more focused.
For sure. And, of course, the Wonder Twins... what can you say about them? They're...
They've been the joke of DC forever.
Forever. Worse than Aquaman.
Yeah. I didn't think that was possible, but yeah.
Like, they get way more flack than Aquaman.
Yeah.
However, there's been a lot of flack given to them, but I thought, okay, well, we'll try it. We'll see how bad and corny this 6 issue?
6 issues, yeah.
I was actually impressed and enjoying myself. There's a lot of really funny moments that I wasn't expecting. And there's some, groan-worthy and head desk moments, but they fit. They fit perfectly.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Jesse, what about you? Any synopses here?
I For me, the humor didn't come across that well for me because my reading comprehension is poor. But I found the meta commentary rather interesting to read without it being actually just shoved in my face. So I thought that was pretty great, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I would put this on a shelf in graphic novel form. I'd love to collect the issues, except I'm sure that I hate to say it this way, but I'm sure a lot of the humor and the social commentary just went right over people's heads as they were looking for just another superhero comic.
I don't know. I could easily recommend this to a few people.
I would recommend it, but how many people do you know that would honestly just look at the Wonder Twins on the cover and pick up that comic? They would probably assume, like a lot of other people did, that this is either a really bad, like, Tag and Bink style joke, or, what kind of story can you actually make out of the Wonder Twins?
So I admit that this is not my thing, but I get easy recommend this to other people who are just want to find an interesting story.
It goes back to
story about the world.
It goes back to DC's problem with diversifying their fans. Their fans get so locked into a few specific characters, they don't really branch out. And this series came to an end with 12 issues. And I think DC missed out on a tremendous opportunity with this book. And I don't mean that they didn't try. They gave a college try. 12 issues nowadays is a pretty good run. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it seems pretty obvious that fans did not pick up and make this a regular ongoing thing. So I think that's a shame. I think that's an absolute shame. This easily suddenly rockets up to like my top 5 favorite comic books DC's ever put out.
Really? Huh.
DC's been very inconsistent in their quality, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of the 3rd volume of Teen Titans. I'm a huge fan of like the 2004 version of The Outsiders. Mm-hmm. The Secret Six by Gail Simone. Loved that entire run. But this one just came up, in my opinion, out of nowhere, and it should have gotten more attention. I really enjoyed the Wonder Twins and everything it has to offer, and I'm going to read the 2nd volume. Don't know exactly when, but I will read it.
Nice.
So I think that's about it. I've been trying to think about what to read next, and I haven't come up with a whole lot of solid suggestions. I was wondering if there was anything that had been out lately that you thought about reading.
Well, let me see.
Done a whole lot of indie books lately, and it's been a while since we did DC, which is why we did Wonder Twins.
Mm-hmm. I need to see what's out there. I haven't picked up comics in a little while.
I feel that. You know what, though? I think it's time to talk about something else that kind of tugged at our curiosity a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
The 1st volume of Excalibur is finished.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? It is a reimagining of a series from the 80s, after all, with almost an essentially new cast behind it. And we all seem to think something of it when the 1st issue came out. Maybe it's time to see if the 1st storyline actually holds.
Okay.
There's worse things to do.
Yeah, we could read, Transformers again.
Hey!
Oh, I said it, and I'm sticking to that.
All right. Well, next week we'll read the 1st volume of Excalibur. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves, and I hope you and yours stay safe during this uncertain period. Thank you very much. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
The Cosmic Library is now closed.
This podcast is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.